The Alpha didn't just reject her. He sentenced her to death. And not just any death. He threw his own mate into the shadow beast's den, the one place no wolf had ever returned from alive. But what he didn't know was that the monster inside the darkness was waiting for her. The mate bond that became a death sentence. Snow fell silently across the iron-claw-packed courtyard. But no one dared speak. Because today, an execution was happening. And the one kneeling in chains was the Alpha's mate. Lyra's fingers trembled against the frozen stone floor. Not from the cold. From disbelief. Her wrists were bound in silver suppression chains, chains meant for criminals, traitors, rogues. Not mates. Never mates. Yet here she was. Kneeling beneath the towering shadow of the Alpha's throne platform while the entire pack watched in silence. Waiting. Judging. Condemning. Above her stood Alpha Kale. The man the moon goddess herself had chosen for her. The man who once held her hand beneath the sacred bond ceremony fire. The man who now refused to even look at her. His silver wolf eyes remained fixed forward. Cold. Distant. Unreadable. As if she were already dead. Lyra swallowed hard. Alpha, her voice cracked. The word barely escaped her throat. She tried again. Kale, please, tell them this is a mistake. Gasps spread through the courtyard. No one called the Alpha by his name. No one except his mate. But Kale did not respond. Instead, another voice answered. Sharp. Elegant. Cruel. She still believes she deserves to speak. Laughter followed. Soft. Mocking. Controlled. Lyra slowly lifted her head. And saw her. Celine. Future Luna candidate. Dressed in royal crimson fur. Standing beside Kale's throne like she already owned it. Celine tilted her head slightly. Interesting, she said. Even after being exposed as a traitor, she still believes she belongs here. Lyra's heart dropped. Traitor. The word echoed like thunder inside her chest. I didn't betray anyone, she whispered. But no one listened. Celine stepped forward gracefully. Snow parted beneath her boots. You were found near the shadow boundary, she said smoothly. You were seen speaking with rogues. I wasn't speaking with rogues. Lyra cried. I was gathering herbs for the healer. Celine smiled slowly. The kind of smile that destroyed lives. How convenient. Murmurs spread across the watching wolves. Doubt. Suspicion. Fear. The healer stepped forward hesitantly. I did send her. But before he could finish, Kale raised his hand. Silence fell instantly. The healer stepped back. Head lowered. Lyra's breath stopped. No. No, no, no. He didn't even want to hear the truth. Her voice broke. You know me. Still. He said nothing. Not one word. Not one defense. Not one denial. Not one memory of the bond they shared. Instead, Kale finally spoke. His voice carried across the courtyard like a blade. The accused was seen near restricted territory. Lyra's chest tightened. She cannot explain her actions. Her heartbeat pounded violently. The punishment. He paused. And for one fragile moment, hope returned. Maybe exile. Maybe imprisonment. Maybe separation. Anything but. Is exile to the shadow beast's Denver. The courtyard exploded into whispers. Shock. Fear. Disbelief. Even warriors stepped back instinctively. Because everyone knew what that meant. No wolf survived the den. Ever. Lyra stopped breathing. Her voice barely existed anymore. You're sending me, there? Still. Kale would not meet her eyes. Celine stepped closer. And whispered just loud enough for Lyra to hear. You should have known your place. Lyra's chains tightened as guards pulled her to her feet. Her legs barely worked. Her soul barely existed. Her mate had just sentenced her to die. The wind changed the moment they crossed the boundary stones. Lyra felt it immediately. Not cold. Not warmth. Something older. Something watching. The Ironclaw warriors escorting her stopped speaking once they entered the Shadow Forest Trail. Even their wolves, normally restless, alert, dominant, had gone silent inside their minds. Because ahead of them stood the place no pack member ever willingly approached. The Shadow Beast's den. It wasn't just a cave. It was a wound in the earth. A jagged opening carved into the black cliffside where even sunlight refused to enter. Mist leaked from it slowly. Breathing. Alive. Watching. Waiting. One of the escorting warriors muttered under his breath. We shouldn't be here this long. Another answered nervously. Just throw her inside and leave. Lyra heard them. But strangely, she no longer felt fear the way she expected to. Only confusion. Because the closer they moved toward the den, the quieter the world became. Even the wind stopped. Even the trees stopped moving. Even the birds vanished. As if the forest itself refused to witness what was about to happen. The massive iron gate surrounding the den entrance appeared suddenly through the fog. Ancient. Broken. Covered in claw marks older than memory. Symbols glowed faintly across its surface. Runes no one in the pack understood anymore. Runes older than the Alpha bloodline itself. Lyra's breath caught. I've never seen this before. One warrior scoffed. Because no one comes here unless they're meant to die. Another stepped forward. Unlocking the heavy chain wrapped around the gate. Metal screamed as it moved. The sound echoed across the valley like a warning. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. Not from fear. From recognition. Something about the gate felt familiar. Impossible. Yet undeniable. The moment the chains dropped. The runes flared brighter. The warriors froze. Did you see that? Yes. Was that always there? No. Lyra stared at the glowing symbols. They weren't reacting to the warriors. They were reacting to her. Inside her chest. Something answered. A warmth. A pulse. A whisper. Not words. But presence. Alive. Ancient. Waiting. The lead warrior grabbed her arm roughly. Enough staring. He dragged her forward. Closer. 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 Until she stood directly before the entrance of the den. Darkness swallowed everything beyond the threshold. No sound came from inside. No movement. No life. Only silence. The kind of silence that existed before the world began. Lyra swallowed. Her voice trembled. There's something in there. The warrior laughed nervously. Exactly. He shoved her forward. She stumbled. Fell to her knees just inches from the entrance. Cold mist curled around her fingers immediately. But it didn't feel threatening. It felt curious. Behind her, the warriors hesitated. No one wanted to step closer than necessary. One whispered urgently. "Throw her inside already." The lead warrior grabbed her shoulders again. His grip tightened. For treason against the Ironclaw pack, he declared loudly, as tradition required. "You are sentenced to exile in the Shadow Beast's Denver." Lyra closed her eyes. Not because she accepted death, but because she finally understood something. Cale never even asked the truth. Not once. Not a single time. The bond between them had meant nothing to him. Her voice came out soft. Almost peaceful. "I hope one day you regret this." The warrior frowned. "What?" But before he could respond, the ground trembled. Not violently. Not suddenly. Slowly. Like something deep beneath the mountain had shifted. The mist around the entrance thickened. Swirling. Rising. Watching. The warriors stepped back instantly. "What was that? Did you feel that?" Something moved inside. Lyra opened her eyes. The darkness inside the den wasn't empty anymore. It was moving. Not forward. Not outward. Closer. Toward her. A deep sound echoed from inside. Not a growl. Not a roar. Something older. Something larger. Something impossible. The warriors panicked. "Push her in. She's waking it. She's waking it." Hands shoved her forward. And Lyra fell across the threshold. The moment her body crossed into the darkness, everything changed. The mist vanished. The wind stopped. The gate behind her slammed shut. And the world outside disappeared completely. Silence returned. Absolute. Total. Endless. Lyra slowly pushed herself upright. Expecting claws. Teeth. Death. Instead, she found herself standing inside something vast. Not a cave. Not a tunnel. A hall. A massive underground chamber larger than the Alpha's throne courtyard. Ancient pillars rose from the floor. Crystal veins glowed faintly along the walls. Symbols covered every surface. Not prison markings. Not warnings. Protection runes. Seals. Bindings. And at the center of the chamber, something enormous shifted in the darkness. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. Then, two eyes opened. Not red. Not gold. Not silver. Black. Endless. Ancient beyond imagination. Lyra should have screamed. Should have run. Should have collapsed. Instead, she whispered the only thing her heart allowed her to say. "I know you." The creature froze. The entire chamber trembled. And then, a voice answered inside her mind. Not loud. Not violent. Not threatening. Soft. Ancient. Familiar. "You finally returned." Lyra stopped breathing. Returned? Returned from where? Returned from when? The shadow beast moved forward slightly. Moonlight from a crack in the ceiling touched part of its body. Not claws. Not fur. Not monster flesh. Armor. Ancient royal armor. Broken. Buried beneath shadow. And chained. The shadow beast wasn't guarding the den. It was imprisoned inside it. Waiting. For her. The chamber did not feel like a prison. It felt like a memory. Lyra stood frozen beneath the towering stone pillars as the creature's black eyes watched her, not with hunger, but with recognition. The chains binding him stretched across the floor like ancient roots. Each one engraved with glowing silver runes. Each one pulsing faintly. Not weakening him. Containing him. Protecting the world from him. Or protecting him from the world. Lyra whispered again, unable to stop herself. I know you. The shadow beast stepped closer. Massive. Silent. Powerful enough to crush mountains. Yet he moved slowly. Carefully. As if afraid she might disappear. Then his voice returned inside her mind. Soft. Ancient. Heavy with centuries of waiting. You remember nothing. Lyra's chest tightened. What do you mean? The creature stopped only a few steps away from her. Moonlight touched more of his form now. She could finally see him clearly. He was not a beast. He was a wolf king. Larger than any alpha in existence. Covered in shadow, not fur. Wearing fragments of shattered royal armor. And across his chest. A broken crescent moon symbol. Lyra's breath caught. Her fingers lifted slowly toward her necklace. The crescent moon pendant she had worn since childhood. The one she never understood. The one no healer could explain. The one that had always been warm against her skin. The same symbol. Impossible. You, she whispered. The creature lowered his head slightly. Respectfully. Not threatening. Not dominant. Reverent. My queen. The word struck her like lightning. Lyra stepped backward. No. Her voice trembled. No, that's impossible. I'm not a queen. I'm an omega. The chamber trembled again. Not from anger. From sorrow. The Shadow King's voice softened further. That is what they told you. Lyra's heart pounded violently. What do you mean? The chains around him pulsed once. Ancient magic shifted through the chamber walls. And suddenly, the crystals surrounding them began glowing brighter. Images formed inside them. Memories. Not hers. Older than her lifetime. Older than the Ironclaw pack itself. She saw wolves kneeling. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Not before Alpha Kale. Not before any Alpha. Before her. Before a woman wearing a crescent moon crown. A queen. A ruler chosen directly by the moon goddess. Lyra staggered backward. That's not real. But the visions continued. She saw war. Pack against pack. Blood across snowfields. Alphas fighting for dominance. Then, she saw betrayal. Ironclaw warriors kneeling before another alpha. Swearing loyalty. Not to the Moon Queen. But to a warlord. A man with silver eyes. Kale's ancestor. The Shadow King's voice echoed again. They feared you. Lyra shook her head slowly. Why would they fear me? The chamber darkened slightly. The chains tightened across the stone floor. Because Moon Queens command more than wolves. Another vision appeared. This one clearer. Stronger. Terrifying. The Moon Queen standing beneath the full moon. And shadows rising around her like living soldiers. Creatures older than wolves. Older than packs. Older than alpha bloodlines. Shadow guardians. Bound to her voice. Bound to her will. Bound to her soul. Lyra's breath stopped. That's impossible. The Shadow King stepped closer again. Not threatening. Protective. You command the ancient guardians. Her voice barely existed now. I'm not her. You are. I'm not. You were hidden. Silence filled the chamber again. Heavy. Truth-filled. Unavoidable. Lyra's chest tightened painfully. Hidden, from who? The Shadow King's voice answered gently. From the Alpha bloodline. The crystals shifted again. Showing another memory. A newborn child. Wrapped in moonlight cloth. A woman crying as she handed the baby to a healer. Hide her, the woman whispered. Before they find her. The healer nodded. I will mark her as Omega. The Shadow King spoke again. They erased your identity. Lyra's legs weakened beneath her. They lied, about what I am. They erased what you are. Tears filled her eyes. My whole life. They feared what would happen if the Moon Queen returned. Another crystal memory appeared. This one darker. The Shadow King himself. Standing beside the Moon Queen. Protecting her. Fighting beside her. Guarding her throne. Until Ironclaw warriors surrounded him. Chains of silver magic thrown across his body. Binding him. Dragging him into the den. Imprisoning him alive. Not killing him. Because they couldn't. Only sealing him. Waiting for her return. Waiting for the one person who could free him. Lyra whispered softly. They trapped you, because of me. The Shadow King lowered his head. They trapped me to prevent you from rising. Silence followed. Long. Heavy. Truth settled slowly inside her chest. Alpha Kale didn't send her here to die. Not really. He sent her here because his bloodline always had. For generations. Every Moon Queen descendant had been erased. Hidden. Disposed of. Before they awakened. Before they remembered. Before they reclaimed the throne. Lyra's hands trembled. My mate. Her voice broke. He knew. The Shadow King's answer came gently. His blood remembers. Lyra's heart shattered again. Kale may not have known consciously. But his wolf did. And his wolf chose power. Over truth. The chamber lights dimmed slightly. Then. The crescent moon pendant around her neck began glowing. Bright. Warm. Alive. The Shadow King's chains reacted immediately. Cracking. Not breaking yet. But weakening. Responding. Recognizing her authority. Recognizing her return. His voice echoed once more inside her mind. Stronger now. Hopeful now. You came back for me. Lyra looked at the glowing pendant in her hand. Then at the chains. Then at the imprisoned king who had waited centuries alone in darkness. For her. Her voice changed. Not frightened anymore. Not weak anymore. Steady. Certain. I didn't know I would. The chamber trembled again. Magic awakened beneath the stone. The den was never meant to kill her. It was meant to wake her. Lyra lifted her head slowly. Eyes glowing faintly with moonlight. And I'm not leaving you here. For the first time in centuries. One of the chains binding the Shadow King. Shattered. The storm began at sunset. Not slowly. Not naturally. Violently. The sky above Ironclaw Pack territory darkened as if night had fallen hours too early. Wolves lifted their heads across the forest. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Even the oldest warriors felt it. A pressure. A pull. A presence rising from beneath the mountain itself. Inside the Alpha's war chamber, Kale stood frozen before the territory map carved into the stone table. His fingers tightened slowly against its edge. Say that again. The scout swallowed hard. The boundary runes near the den are reacting. Kale's silver eyes sharpened instantly. That's impossible. No one survives the Denver. The scout hesitated. Then spoke again. They're not reacting like something escaped. Kale's voice dropped. Then how are they reacting? The scout looked uncertain. Like something awakened. Silence filled the chamber. Heavy. Dangerous. Celine stepped forward from the shadows behind the throne platform. Graceful. Calm. Controlled. Perhaps the creature inside finally died, she suggested smoothly. Kale didn't respond. Because his wolf had already begun pacing inside his mind. Restless. Uneasy. Alert. Wrong. Everything felt wrong. Celine continued softly. The den has remained sealed for generations. If the shadow beast is gone, the runes would weaken. Kale turned toward her slowly. No. Celine blinked. What? The runes don't weaken when something dies. His voice lowered. They weaken when something returns. The war chamber fell silent again. Even Celine stopped smiling. Outside. Wolves began howling. Not in warning. Not in battle preparation. In confusion. Kale stepped toward the chamber entrance. Prepare the patrol. Celine followed immediately. You're going to the den? Yes. That's unnecessary. His voice hardened. No. Something inside him had already decided. His wolf wasn't afraid. His wolf was listening. Responding. Remembering. Something ancient inside his bloodline had awakened. And it was calling him back to the place he thought he had sealed forever. Far beneath the mountain. Inside the ancient chamber. Another chain shattered. The sound echoed like thunder. Lyra stepped backward as silver fragments dissolved into glowing dust across the stone floor. She stared at her hands. They're breaking faster now. The Shadow King watched her carefully. Not surprised. Not afraid. Certain. Because you are remembering faster. Lyra touched the crescent pendant again. It was warm now. Almost alive. Memories flickered at the edges of her thoughts. Not complete yet. Not clear yet. But growing. Changing her. Strengthening her. She looked up at him again. How many chains are left? His answer came gently. 7. Lyra exhaled slowly. That's still too many. The Shadow King stepped closer. The remaining chains pulled tightly against his movement, but they no longer held him as strongly as before. The seals weaken with your return. Lyra frowned slightly. My return isn't enough. The chamber lights flickered again. Stronger this time. Ancient symbols across the pillars began glowing brighter. Responding to her presence. Responding to her voice. Responding to her command. The Shadow King's voice echoed softly again. You are not meant to free me alone. Lyra looked up quickly. What does that mean? Before he could answer. The chamber trembled violently. Not from inside. From above. Someone was approaching the den. Lyra froze. They're coming back? The Shadow King's eyes darkened slightly. Not warriors. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. Then who? His voice carried something new now. Something complicated. Something old. Your mate. At the cliffside entrance to the den. Kale arrived before the patrol finished forming behind him. The ancient iron gate stood exactly where it always had. Silent. Still. Unchanged. Except. The runes were glowing. Bright. Alive. Active. Kale stepped closer slowly. His wolf surged forward inside him immediately. Recognition. Urgency. Instinct. Wrong. Everything was wrong. Celine reached his side quickly. It's reacting to the storm, she insisted. No. Kale stepped closer again. Closer than any alpha had stood near the gate in generations. The runes flared brighter instantly. Responding to him. Calling to him. Warning him. He placed his hand against the cold iron surface. And the moment he did, a memory struck him. Not his memory. Older. Deeper. Blood memory. A moon queen standing before this same gate centuries ago. Commanding it. Opening it. Releasing something ancient from inside. Kale jerked his hand back immediately. Celine noticed. What did you see? He didn't answer. Because something inside the den had just answered him instead. A pulse. A signal. A presence. Alive. Awake. Waiting. His wolf growled low inside his chest. Not in warning. In recognition. Celine stepped closer again. You shouldn't stay here. Kale turned toward her slowly. Did you ever wonder why the den exists? Celine froze slightly. What? No one built prisons this strong unless something inside couldn't be killed. Her expression tightened slightly. That creature nearly destroyed the packs. Kale shook his head slowly. No. Celine's voice sharpened. What do you mean, no? Kale stepped closer to the gate again. Eyes narrowing. Something else happened here. Before Celine could respond. The gate responded. A crack of silver light burst across its surface. The runes flared. The chains holding the gate trembled. And deep beneath the mountain, another seal broke. Inside the chamber, Lyra staggered backward as a second chain shattered. Silver light filled the air around her. The Shadow King straightened slightly. Stronger now. Taller now. Closer to freedom. Lyra stared upward in shock. That wasn't me. The Shadow King's voice answered calmly. No. Her heartbeat accelerated. Then what broke it? He looked toward the ceiling. Toward the entrance. Toward the Alpha standing unknowingly above them. Your mate did. Lyra's breath stopped completely. What? The Shadow King stepped closer again. Chains dragging behind him. Breaking slowly now. The Alpha bloodline helped seal me. Another chain cracked. Only the Alpha bloodline can help release me. Lyra stared upward toward the distant gate above the mountain. Kale wasn't just part of the problem. He was part of the solution. And he didn't even know it yet. At the entrance, Kale stepped back suddenly. His wolf surged violently inside him now. Responding. Calling. Answering something far below the stone. Celine grabbed his arm. We need to leave. Kale didn't move. Because for the first time since sentencing Lyra to the den, he felt her. Alive. His voice barely existed. She's still there. Celine froze. That's impossible. Kale's eyes glowed brighter. Silver light spreading across his irises. No. His voice dropped lower. Stronger. Certain. She's still alive. And deep beneath the mountain. The Moon Queen smiled for the first time since entering the den. The third chain broke at midnight. Not slowly. Not gently. It shattered like lightning striking stone. Silver fragments burst across the chamber floor, dissolving into drifting sparks of ancient magic that circled Lyra's body before sinking into the glowing crescent pendant at her throat. She gasped. Something inside her mind opened. Not memories exactly. Not visions exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. Belonging. Authority. The chamber responded immediately. The pillars lining the ancient hall lit one after another, their carved runes awakening in waves of pale moonlight. The crystals embedded in the walls brightened until the entire underground sanctuary glowed like a hidden sky beneath the mountain. Lyra turned slowly in place. This isn't a prison. Her voice echoed differently now. Stronger. Clearer. Certain. The Shadow King watched her carefully. It never was. Lyra looked back at him. But everyone said this place was cursed. The Shadow King stepped forward as far as his remaining chains allowed. Only cursed to those who feared its ruler. Lyra's fingers tightened slightly around the crescent pendant. Me. Yes. Silence followed. Not heavy. Not frightening. Sacred. Then. The chamber floor shifted beneath her feet. Ancient symbols spread outward in glowing circles around her boots. Responding to her presence. Responding to her blood. Responding to her return. Lyra stepped back slightly. What is happening? The Shadow King's voice carried quiet certainty. The guardians are waking. The air inside the chamber changed instantly. Not colder. Not warmer. Alive. The shadows along the walls began moving. Not like darkness. Like creatures made from darkness. Tall silhouettes stepped forward slowly from between the crystal pillars. Silent. Massive. Ancient. Each shaped like wolves, but not entirely wolves. Their bodies were formed from shifting night itself. Their eyes glowed faint silver. Not threatening. Waiting. Lyra's breath caught. What are they? The Shadow King lowered his head respectfully again. Your guardians. One stepped closer. Then another. Then another. Until 12 towering shadow wolves surrounded the chamber's central floor. None of them approached the Shadow King. All of them approached her. Lyra stood completely still. Unsure what to do. Unsure what to say. Unsure what they expected. The nearest guardian lowered its massive head slowly. Kneeling. The others followed immediately. One after another. Until all 12 shadow guardians bowed before her. The chamber filled with moonlight. Lyra's voice trembled again. They're bowing. The Shadow King's answer carried quiet pride. They recognized their queen. The crescent pendant flared brighter. Warmth spread through her chest. Then her arms. Then her hands. Then her voice changed. Not louder. Not sharper. But older. Stronger. Instinctively. She spoke. Rise. The guardians rose immediately. Together. Without hesitation. Without question. Lyra stared at them in disbelief. I didn't mean to do that. The Shadow King almost sounded amused. You did. Another chain cracked behind him. Then another. The Guardian's awakening was weakening the seals faster now. Lyra looked back toward him. How many are left? 3. Hope surged through her chest. We're almost there. The Shadow King stepped forward again. Closer than ever before. Chains dragging weaker now across the stone. Yes. Then his voice changed slightly. Not uncertain. Not afraid. Concerned. But the Alpha approaches. Lyra froze. Her heartbeat stumbled. Kale. The mate who rejected her. The mate who sentenced her. The mate who still carried part of the magic sealing this chamber. Her voice lowered. He's coming here? Yes. She turned slowly toward the distant ceiling of the underground sanctuary. Toward the entrance above the mountain. Toward the gate that had been locked for centuries. I'm not ready to face him. The Shadow King answered gently. You already are. The guardians shifted slightly behind her. Not nervous. Protective. Ready. Then. Another tremor shook the chamber. Stronger than before. Closer than before. Above them. The ancient gate began opening. At the entrance to the den. Kale felt the moment it unlocked. Not with his eyes. With the bond. His wolf surged forward violently inside him. Alive. Relieved. Desperate. Celine grabbed his arm again. No. Her voice was sharper now. Urgent. We leave. Kale pulled free immediately. She's inside. Celine's expression tightened. You don't know that. I do. His silver eyes glowed brighter than they had since the day of his coronation. She's alive. The gate opened another inch. Ancient dust fell from its surface. Runes burned brighter across its frame. Celine stepped between him and the entrance. If you go inside, you may not come back. Kale's answer came instantly. I already sent my mate in. The word surprised even him. Mate. Not traitor. Not prisoner. Mate. His wolf had chosen its truth. Even if he had not. The gate opened wider. Darkness waited beyond it. But this time. It did not feel empty. It felt like a throne waiting for its ruler. Inside the chamber. Lyra felt the gate open before she heard it. The guardians lifted their heads together. Alert. Still kneeling behind her. Still waiting for her command. The Shadow King straightened fully now. Only 3 chains remained. His voice carried certainty. He comes. Lyra's hands trembled once. Then steadied. No. Her voice changed again. Stronger now. Clearer now. Certain now. He arrives. The difference mattered. Because she wasn't the Omega he abandoned anymore. She wasn't the prisoner he condemned anymore. She wasn't the girl kneeling in chains in the snow anymore. She was the Moon Queen. And the den was no longer his execution ground. It was her throne chamber. The mate who sentenced her meets the queen he tried to bury. The gate opened completely at dawn. Not with noise. Not with violence. With recognition. Ancient runes along its edges burned like silver fire as Alpha Kale stepped across the threshold no Alpha had crossed in centuries. The moment his foot touched the stone floor inside the den. The bond between them exploded awake. Lyra felt it instantly. Not faint. Not distant. Strong. Alive. Unavoidable. Her breath caught. He's here. Behind her, the 12 shadow guardians rose to their full height. Silent. Massive. Watching the entrance. Watching the Alpha who once ruled her fate. The Shadow King spoke calmly behind her. Stand as you are. Lyra didn't move. Didn't hide. Didn't step back. She stood at the center of the chamber. Where a throne had once existed. Where her throne still waited. Footsteps echoed through the entrance corridor. Slow. Careful. Certain. Kale stepped into the chamber. And stopped. Everything inside him froze. Because the den he remembered from pack history did not exist. This place was not a monster's cave. It was a forgotten royal sanctuary. Crystal pillars glowed like frozen moonlight. Ancient runes circled the chamber floor. Shadow guardians stood surrounding the center platform like silent sentinels. And in the middle of them stood Lyra. Alive. Unchained. Untouched. Glowing. His voice came out hoarse. Lyra. She didn't answer. Because for the first time since the bond ceremony, she didn't feel small in front of him. She didn't feel uncertain in front of him. She didn't feel like she needed his approval. Instead, the chamber responded to her presence. Not his. Kale took another step forward. The guardians moved instantly, blocking his path. 12 shadow wolves formed a wall between them. Kale's wolf surged forward inside him. Not in attack. In recognition. Confusion filled his voice. They're protecting you. Lyra spoke calmly. Yes. Another step forward. And Kale finally saw the Shadow King behind her. Chained. Ancient. Watching him. Recognition struck his blood instantly. Not memory. Instinct. Bloodline memory. His voice dropped. Him. The Shadow King answered without moving. Alpha descendant. The chamber trembled slightly. The last two chains binding the Shadow King tightened. Reacting to Kale's presence. Reacting to his bloodline. Lyra looked between them slowly. You knew. Kale blinked. Knew what? That your bloodline sealed him here. Silence followed. Long. Heavy. Kale's jaw tightened slightly. I didn't know. The Shadow King answered calmly. Your wolf did. Kale's wolf growled deep inside his chest. Not in anger. In shame. Lyra's voice remained steady. You sent me here anyway. Kale looked at her fully now. For the first time since the courtyard. Not as alpha. Not as judge. As mate. I thought you betrayed the pack. Did you ask me? His silence answered. The truth struck harder than accusation ever could. Lyra lifted her chin slightly. You chose power over truth. Before he could respond, footsteps echoed behind him. Celine entered the chamber. Her expression changed the moment she saw Lyra standing alive among the guardians. No. Her voice trembled. This isn't possible. The guardians growled low. Not attacking. Warning. Celine stepped forward anyway. Desperate now. You shouldn't be alive. Lyra turned slowly toward her. You shouldn't have lied. Kale looked sharply between them. What lies? Celine froze. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Lyra's crescent pendant flared with light. The chamber responded instantly. Crystals along the pillars awakened, projecting memory images across the air. Celine standing beside the boundary forest weeks earlier. Speaking to rogue wolves. Giving them information. Giving them territory paths. Framing Lyra. Kale's voice dropped dangerously. Celine. Her composure shattered. You don't understand. I understand enough. She stepped backward. You were supposed to choose me. The chamber darkened slightly. The guardians moved closer. You were supposed to reject her. Her voice cracked. She was never meant to survive. Silence filled the chamber. Kale's wolf roared inside him now. Not confused anymore. Certain. He turned slowly toward Lyra again. I was wrong. The words came heavy. Honest. Late. Lyra didn't answer. Because something else happened at that exact moment. The final chain binding the Shadow King cracked. Then shattered completely. Silver light exploded across the chamber. The seals dissolved into drifting fragments of ancient magic. The Shadow King stepped forward freely. For the first time in centuries. The guardians lowered their heads immediately. Kale stepped back instinctively. Not in fear. In recognition. The Shadow King stopped beside Lyra. Not in front of her. Beside her. Equal. Protective. Loyal. His voice filled the chamber like thunder beneath moonlight. The Queen has returned. The chamber floor lit beneath her feet. Ancient throne symbols awakened around her. Celine collapsed backward. No. Kale stared at Lyra. Not as alpha. Not as judge. Not even as mate. As something older. Something deeper. Something sacred. Moon Queen. Lyra met his gaze calmly. Not angry. Not weak. Not forgiving. Certain. You sent me here to die. Her voice echoed across the chamber. But this place was never my grave. Moonlight flooded the sanctuary. Shadow Guardians stood behind her like living night itself. The Shadow King stood beside her like a silent crown of power. And now, she finished softly. It's my throne. If this story surprised you, if your heart broke for Lyra when her own mate sent her to die, then you're not ready for what happens next. Because the Moon Queen has only just begun to rise. Tell me in the comments. Should Lyra forgive Alpha Kale? Or should she choose the Shadow King instead? And if you want to see what happens when she returns to the pack that betrayed her, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. Her revenge, her destiny, and her true throne are only just beginning.